Julius Eastman. You know him? You love him? Psych! You don't know him at all, and you lied to me. How dare you? His work, his composition, his whole life was buried underneath the works of other people who just so happened to be straight and so happened to be white, which honestly is wild. I have never known any kind of bias to be in the music industry, so, there's a massive bias in the music industry. I don't think I really have to explain that, but we are about to exhume his legacy. He changed the face of modern art, and his name should be as well known as Philip Glass. His performance art was evocative and made huge waves in the community of New York City. His vocals, his piano playing, his compositions, we're learning about that because we can take that out into the real world. We can look at new compositions, at new artists with a newfound respect for the ones who came before us, who paved the way for us. Had it not been for Julius Eastman, who knows where we'd be now? But that's not the question. The question, dear viewer, is what you will do with this information. Take this information and run with it. Let's get started. Eastman was born October 27, 1940, a Libra, for those who care, to Julius Eastman Sr. and Frances Eastman. His father never wanted children, so by the time his younger brother, Jerry, came around, his father decided to dip. Love that. We love a good deadbeat dad. We don't love a good deadbeat dad. By the time he was 17, he had landed his first gig playing piano at the Iris Barbara studio. But he wasn't satisfied with just singing and playing piano. Not in the slightest. May 14th, 1959, he was accepted into the Curtis Institute of Music in Philadelphia. 19-year-old gay black boy in 1959 doing all of this? It's pretty impressive. In February 1961, Julius Eastman changed his major from a piano major to a composition major. Despite all of these things in his life that are starting to go well, he wasn't really doing well. He was sick quite often, mentally and physically. He was unreliable in his class attendance, but his compositions got him by. He didn't have any money, but he had talent that could get him there. On February 27, 1963, he put on his graduation recital, which comprised of mostly his own compositions. Now, he did perform other people's compositions, such as The Blood or the Songs Trilogy by John Cage. I want you to keep the Songs Trilogy in mind. That's going to be important later. Just keep that locked away in your little brain box. And finally, May 11th, 1963, Julius Eastman received his diploma and moved on to the next part of his life. September 1st, 1969, he joins the Creative Associates in Buffalo, New York. This guy started doing everything, even being a music theory teacher at the University of Buffalo in 1969. At 28 years old, in reality, he was actually kind of a disgruntled teacher. He didn't like doing it. So come fall of 1972, his contract isn't renewed and he stops working at the University of Buffalo. Once he left the school, he left the last thing that was holding him back. He could start doing whatever he wanted, and he started doing whatever he wanted. Now, remember the songbooks I told you about earlier? This was the first big change. John Cage wrote many songbooks, and this was one that Julius Eastman was performing in. He was given a prompt: do a disciplined act. He decided to use that to give a lecture on how to make love. But the thing that made it interesting was that he did this homoerotically. That was something that was completely taboo. It was wild that he even thought to do it, let alone actually go through with it. Now, Eastman did end up challenging that little ivory tower white scene, regardless of whether he meant to or not. You know how you can't hold your breath forever? This is one of those situations. Eastman was holding his breath. He was starting to suffocate, and it was showing in pretty much every aspect of his life. He felt very stifled with the Creative Associates. He just wasn't happy. That being said, he decided to move to New York City with nothing but the clothes on his back, dip out of Creative Associates, and that's that. Welcome to New York City. It's 1976. Civil rights movement and the queer liberation movement were hand in hand. This was a crucial place for him to be. 36 years old, he decided to stay with his grandmother in South Bronx, and he stayed for about a year. Ned also moved to New York City, but that was of his own accord, and he stayed on the Upper West Side. He did attend Eastman's first concert that he put on in New York City, and a music critic also did, by the name of Joseph Horowitz. Joseph had a little bit to say about the concert. Mr. Eastman's approach was fervent, and the result was surprisingly riveting. Seems like a pretty good entrance for someone going into New York City. His name wasn't unknown. Even if somebody had only heard a whisper of it, his name was still spoken. And he started composing things angrier. He started showing more of the frustrations that he's had as a queer man, as a black man, as a queer black man. And he started putting that into his music. People were calling him evil. People were calling him crazy. And so he decided, oh, people are going to call me that. They're not going to work with it. And that's what leads us to the piece that I want to talk about today, called Evil
Nigger.
At this point, he was reclaiming those slurs like faggot and
nigger.
It was written for 4 pianos and only included a small variety of notes and movements and duration of notes. It was very minimal and extremely deceiving. I want you to listen to this part of the song from 3 minutes 40 seconds. I'll explain why I'm using timestamps in a little while. Listen to this real quick. He had his friend Joseph Kubera write down a general instruction book for the performance of this song. The exact title is General Instructions for Julius Eastman's Evil
Nigger.
The musicians had a lot of freedom. Basically, the way that the music was written, the musician could play it in any octave that they wanted to. He did not write this music with measure numbers. No. That's not old boy's style. This man wrote the song with timestamps. This guy was crazy in the best way. Here's a direct quote, okay? Every musician must have a stopwatch to follow the progress through the piece. Each of these musicians needed to have their own stopwatch, needed to start it at the same time. If one of them was even 1 second behind, it would be heard. This is punk. This is the coolest thing. This guy was using art, using this kind of art to challenge authority. Who thinks about using composition, especially composition like this? It is incredible that he was able to channel this idea of being loud and proud with so little. This was only one example of how he was challenging authority. He used minimalism to challenge society as a whole, to challenge African American and academic white composers. Moving on from that, Julius Eastman's life kind of took a little bit of a turn. He began to spiral a little bit. People started to kind of notice that he was a little stranger than usual, especially Ned and his brother Jerry. They both saw he was a little different. He cared less and less about his safety, was bringing in random people to wherever it was that he was staying, regardless of the thoughts or concerns of the person he was staying with, was letting go of everything. But not a single thing was staying in that man's hands, except for a bottle. He did seek out psychiatric help in the late 80s from one of his friends, but it was too much too late. He moved back to Buffalo May of 1989. May 28th, 1990, Julius Eastman passed away from cardiac arrest. Julius Eastman put in the work that had never been put in before. Eastman's work and very life was washed away. Our history will guide our future. Remembering somebody like Julius Eastman, that changes the future. Learn the history, share the history, because if not, it's not going to be a future for any of us. And that, dear viewers, is what they scripted. Here's further reading. Highly recommend you read the book Gay Gorilla. It's really cool. Yeah. Go stream Julius Eastman's stuff. Bye.